The 1991 siege of Kijevo was one of the earliest conflicts in the Croatian War of Independence. The 9th Corps of the Yugoslav People's Army, led by Colonel Ratko Mladic, and the forces of the Serbian Autonomous Oblast of Krajina under NIN Police Chief Milan Martic, besieged the Croat-inhabited village of Kijevo in late April and early May 1991. The initial siege was lifted after negotiations that followed major protests in Split against the JNA. The JNA and the Krajina forces renewed the blockade in mid-August. Kijevo was captured on the 26th of August, and subsequently looted and burned. The fighting in Kijevo was significant as one of the first instances when the JNA openly sided with the Krajina against Croatian authorities. The Croatian police fled Kijevo towards the town of Drniš, and the remaining Croatian population left the village. Martic was tried at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia on several different charges of war crimes, including his involvement in the siege of Kijevo. The trial resulted in a guilty verdict, and the findings of the trial chamber regarding Kijevo, made in 2007, were confirmed by the ICTY Appeals Chamber in 2008, based on witness testimonies about it being ethnic cleansing. The siege was the first instance of use of the ethnic cleansing in the Yugoslav wars. Croatian authorities tried Mladic in absentia and convicted him for war crimes committed in Kijevo. Background: in 1990, ethnic tensions between Serbs and Croats worsened after the electoral defeat of the government of the Socialist Republic of Croatia by the Croatian Democratic Union. The Yugoslav People's Army confiscated Croatia's territorial defense weapons to minimize resistance. On 17 August, the tensions escalated into an open revolt of the Croatian Serbs, centered on the predominantly Serb-populated areas of the Dalmatian hinterland around NIN, northeast of Split, parts of the Lika, Kordun, Banovina and eastern Croatia. Serbia, supported by Montenegro and Serbia's provinces of Vojvodina and Kosovo, unsuccessfully tried to obtain the Yugoslav presidency's approval for a JNA operation to disarm Croatian security forces in January 1991. The request was denied, and a bloodless skirmish between Serb insurgents and Croatian special police in March prompted the JNA itself to ask the federal presidency to give it wartime authority and declare a state of emergency. Even though the request was backed by Serbia and its allies, the JNA was denied on 15 March. Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic, preferring a campaign to expand Serbia rather than to preserve Yugoslavia with Croatia as a federal unit, publicly threatened to replace the JNA with a Serbian army and declared that he no longer recognized the authority of the federal presidency. The threat caused the JNA to gradually abandon plans to preserve Yugoslavia in favor of expansion of Serbia as the JNA came under Milosevic's control. By the end of March, the conflict had escalated to the first fatalities. In early April, leaders of the Serb revolt in Croatia declared their intention to integrate areas under their control with Serbia. These were viewed by the government of Croatia as breakaway regions. At the beginning of 1991, Croatia had no regular army. To bolster its defense, Croatia doubled police personnel to about 20,000. The most effective part of the force was 3,000-strong special police deployed in 12 battalions and adopting military organization of the units. There were also 9,000–10,000 regionally organized reserve police set up in 16 battalions and 10 companies. The reserve force lacked weapons. As a response to the deteriorating situation, the Croatian government established the Croatian National Guard in May by merging the special police battalions into 4 all-professional guards brigades, together consisting of approximately 8,000 troops subordinate to the Ministry of Defense headed by retired JNA General Martin Spegelj. The regional police, by then expanded to 40,000, was also attached to the ZNG and reorganized in 19 brigades and 14 independent battalions. The Guards brigades were the only units of the ZNG that were fully armed with small arms. Throughout the ZNG there was a lack of heavier weapons and there was no command and control structure. The shortage of heavy weapons was so severe that the ZNG resorted to using World War II weapons taken from museums and film studios. At the time, Croatian stockpile of weapons consisted of 30,000 small arms purchased abroad and 15,000 previously owned by the police. A new 10,000-strong special police was established then to replace the personnel lost to the Guards brigades. Prelude. In 1991, Kijevo was a village of 1,261 people, 99.6% of whom were Croats. It was surrounded by the Serb villages of Polaka, Savijan and Cetin. Following the Log Revolution, the three Serb villages had become part of the Sao Krajina and road access to Kijevo was restricted as barricades were set up in Polaka and Savijan, on the roads serving the village. In response, its population set up an ad hoc militia. Following the Plitvice Lakes incident of 1 April 1991, Sao Krajina forces captured 3 Croatian policemen from nearby DRNIs, with the intention of exchanging them for Croatian Serb troops taken prisoner by the Croatian forces at the Plitvice Lakes. In turn, the militia established by the residents of Kijevo captured several Serb civilians and demanded that the captured policemen be released in exchange for their prisoners. On 2 April, JNA intelligence officers reported on this, and warned how local militias in Kijevo and Savijan, otherwise separated by barricades, were engaged in armed skirmishes that threatened to escalate. Kijevo became strategically significant because its location hindered Sao Krajina road communications. April-May blockade. In the night of 27–28 April, a group of Croatian Ministry of the Interior officers managed to reach Kijevo, and a Croatian police station was formally established in the village on 28 April. The following day, JNA troops, commanded by the JNA 9th Corps Chief of Staff Colonel Ratko Mladic, moved in, cutting all access and preventing delivery of supplies to Kijevo. On 2 May, a Croatian police helicopter made an emergency landing in Kijevo after sustaining damage caused by Sao Krajina troops' gunfire. The helicopter was carrying then Defense Minister Luka Bebic and Croatian Parliament Deputy Speaker Vladimir Šeks. The aircraft was able to take off after repairs the same day. Another skirmish took place on 2 May on Mount Kozjak, where a member of the Sao Krajina paramilitary was killed while on guard duty. Croatian President Franjo Tudman called on the public to bring the siege to an end, and the plea resulted in a large-scale protest against the JNA in Split, organized by the Croatian Trade Union Association in the Brodosplit shipyard on 6 May 1991. On 7 May 80 tanks and tracked vehicles and 23 wheeled vehicles of the JNA 10th Motorized Brigade left barracks in Mostar, only to be stopped by civilians ahead of Soroki Brijeg west of Mostar. The convoy remained in place for 3 days as the crowd demanded that the JNA lift the siege of Kijevo. The protest ended after Alija Izetbegović, the president of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, visited and addressed the protesters, assuring the crowd that the convoy was heading to Kupres rather than Kijevo. Tudman and Cardinal Franjo Kuharic sent telegrams to the protesters supporting Izetbegović. The siege of Kijevo was lifted through negotiations a few days later, 2 weeks after the blockade had been imposed. August blockade. The next day, the Croatian Serb leader Milan Martic laid down an ultimatum to the police and inhabitants of Kijevo, demanding that they leave the village and its vicinity within 2 days, or face an armed attack. Between 23 and 25 August, Croatian forces evacuated nearly the entire civilian population of the village. On 25 August, Croatian forces launched a failed attack on JNA barracks in Sinj, 38 kilometers to the southeast of Kijevo. The objective of the attack was to obtain weapons, needed as Croatian positions near Kijevo deteriorated. On 26 August, the JNA attacked Kijevo, opposed by 58 policemen armed with small arms only and commanded by police station chief Martin Sisine. Between 5:18 and 1300, the JNA fired 1,500 artillery shells against the village, and the Yugoslav Air Force supported the attack with 34 close air support sorties. The same afternoon, the JNA mounted a ground force assault on Kijevo. According to Martic, each house in Kijevo was fired upon. The attacking force consisted of approximately 30 tanks supported by JNA infantry and Croatian Serb militia. The JNA entered the village by 1630. Lieutenant Colonel Borislav Thukic, in command of the Tactical Group 1 tasked with capture of Kijevo, and the commanding officer of the JNA 221st Motorized Infantry Brigade, reported that the village was secured by 22:30. The Croatian police fled Kijevo in 3 groups via Mount Kozjak towards Drniš. The remaining Croatian population left after the artillery had destroyed much of their settlements. The retreating groups were pursued by the Yugoslav Air Force jets as they made their way across the Kozjak. Radio Television Belgrade reporter Vesna Jugovic recorded these events. Krajina units commanded by Martic acted in concert with JNA to take command of the area. Aftermath. The clash between the Croatian forces and the JNA in Kijevo was one of the first instances where the JNA openly sided with the insurgent Serbs in the rapidly escalating Croatian War of Independence. Acting based on Martic's ultimatum, the defending force suffered only 2 wounded, but one of the retreating groups was captured. The group, consisting of 20 men, were later released in a prisoner of war exchange. The JNA suffered no casualties. After the JNA secured Kijevo, the village was looted and torched. The destruction of Kijevo became one of the most notorious Serb crimes in the early stages of the war. The JNA units which took part in the fighting in and around Kijevo advanced towards Sinj in the following few days, capturing Vrlika before being redeployed to take part in the Battle of Srebrenic in mid-September. At the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the trial of Milan Martic resulted in a guilty verdict with regard to Martic's involvement on Kijevo, and the findings of the trial chamber in 2007 regarding Kijevo were confirmed by the appeals chamber in 2008. Based on witness testimonies about it being ethnic cleansing. The siege of Kijevo was the first instance of application of the strategy of ethnic cleansing in the Yugoslav wars. The events at Kijevo were not included in the indictment at the trial of Ratko Mladic, but the Croatian judiciary tried Mladic in absentia for war crimes committed in Kijevo. He was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison.